friends.
Welcome to it, ladies and gentlemen, a Thursday morning, the 5th of December. And joining us in studio is Mr. Nico Kleynhans. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you and also to the listeners. Somebody asked me, how do I decide what question I'm going to ask or answer on air?
And it's a big question.
It is an important question. Now, what you may or may not know is that if everything I do on air gets put on YouTube, and I can track who watches, listens to those YouTubes. And in any typical month, I notice that about 100 listeners will play those YouTubes every single day.
Fantastic.
So it gets to about 2,500 to 3,000 people who will watch that over a month. Now, of those 3,000 people who watch, about 80 will make private contact with me, and they will ask questions. And I will then choose 4 of those questions to deal with on Thursday mornings.
Wow.
So that's how I get to deal with it. Now, today I'm going to deal with gender-based violence because the incident that was reported to me got me fairly frustrated. And I also decided, since it's Gender-Based Violence Month, let's see what happens in our country. And so some of those stats are not going to be very pleasant. I warn you now. Now, gender-based violence, I'm actually going to read it so that we get the definition right. Refers to any act of violence that is directed against any individual based on their gender identity or their perceived gender identity. Now, for years and years, our politicians and very important people have been taking huge amounts of money, making lots of speeches against gender-based violence. So we have to measure how effective those speeches are.
Yeah.
And I do that by looking at police statistics. So over the past 3 months, 1,567 women have reported that there was an attempted murder against them. That's in 3 months.
Hectic.
1,567 attempted murder. 14,366 women reported other acts of violence. These are reported. We're not talking about the people who didn't report it.
Exactly.
10,000 women reported rapes. Now, we know the
This is in a
statistic.
3-month period. Yeah.
3 months. We know the stat in terms of reported versus suspected is 6 times.
Yo.
In most cases, the perpetrator was an intimate partner.
So somebody that the person knows intimately.
And often lives with.
Sure.
So it does seem to me that whatever we are saying and doing is not working. It's not making a difference. Now, the issue that came to me was not violence in that form, but violence in a different form. And that's what I want to talk about, because I think that affects us more and what we can do something about. And it was Mrs. X, the granny. She got to the point where she's now retiring. And her employer has given her 600,000 rand. That is her pension.
Yeah.
That must last her when she's 70, when she's 75, when she's 80, when she's 85. That has got to last her for the rest of her life. So, of course, she reports that to her clan. So child number 1 comes to her and says, you know what? We really need a new motor car. Why don't you bless us with enough money to buy us a new car? After all, it's the Christian thing to do. Child number 2 comes to her and says, you know what? My husband and I are struggling to make our bond payments, and we're getting into trouble. And you love your grandchildren. You don't want to see them on the streets. Why don't you bless us by paying up all the arrears and just pay a year ahead as well?
What?
Because after all, it's the Christian thing to do. You're passing God's blessing on to us. I consider that bullying.
Yeah.
Because if she listens to that, what is she going to do when she's 70 and when she's 75? Are those kids going to come up and support her? I don't think so. And to use scripture to rob somebody in your family is unacceptable. Now, we all have tea and coffee with somebody, and we all know somebody who's being bullied by their family. That is gender-based violence as well. It may not be physical violence. And then we have a choice. We can repeat the Samaritan story where we just look and say, oh, it's not my business, and we walk away. Or we can say, what did Jesus teach us with this parable? And what should we be doing? And I'm suggesting that as Christians, we do need to get involved. And we do need to do more than just quote Bible and move on. And so I think gender-based violence is real. It's not only physical violence. Sometimes it's bullying. And we have a right to try and protect those people who cross our paths. It's what Jesus would do.
So on point. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Nico. Really